Thank you, Guillermo. Yes, I can hear you guys.
All right, Marcos, we're ready when you are.
All right, Guillermo, thank you very much for the introduction. So, hello everyone, thank you for joining us today. As Guillermo well said, I'm attorney Marcos Kraemer, a licensed attorney in Panama. We've been practicing law here for the last 16 years, specializing in immigration law, as well as areas such as taxation, asset protection, corporations, real estate transactions, and so on. All right. We've been receiving a lot of questions from many of our clients regarding some rumors on the changes on the Friendly Nations Visa. So we're going to be covering the details of the existing Friendly Nations Visa program, as well as some of the rumors around. So let's get started. The Friendly Nations Visa program is a program that started back in the year 2012, allowing certain nationalities to apply for an expedited permanent residency process in the country. Within the years, it added more nationalities, up to the total of approximately 50 different countries, all the way from North America, Europe, some countries in South America, South Africa, South Korea, Australia, and so on. The program allows you to obtain permanent residency in the country with the option to live and work subject to additional permits. And after 5 years of having the permanent residency granted, you are able to file, you become eligible to apply for citizenship. We're going to give you some more details on that going forward. So the timeline on the Friendly Nations Visa changes by law, or the different decrees that the government made. You can see on the screen. On 2012, it was created, and then in that same year, it added some more countries. On the next year as well, on the following year, and so forth. Until last year, in about May, a big change was announced, where the immigration program, as we knew it, was gonna be seized. Okay, so basically, the program was very easy, on the meaning that with a very low investment, you could obtain permanent residency in Panama in a very short time frame. Basically, within a 6 months time frame period, you would immediately become a permanent resident of the country with a very low investment. Okay, different pressures from some of economic and political forces in the country have been trying to seize the program as it was, and that happened in 2021 in the month of May, and in July 20th, they changed it again by adding Peru to the list of countries, and by adding the option of a fixed term deposit. Okay, so we're gonna cover that. Let's see something about the myths. Rumors around would include things like, is the old Friendly Nations Visa back under the same terms prior to August 2021? So the answer is no. The last change, as you see in the previous screen, was in July, by executive decree in July 2021, and no changes to the program has officially been made by the government to date. Okay, so the old program is not back as it used to be. Remember how it used to be: very low deposit, $5,000 bank deposit in a bank in Panama, and showing the ownership of a simple company, a holding company. And you would obtain permanent residency within 6 months. Not the case anymore. Is sellers financing acceptable? Okay, we've received that question from folks who intend to invest in real estate in the country, and the law is very clear to accept bank financing, but not sellers financing. We see many clients, many real estate transactions where there are sellers financing. It's very common here, but for the residency program, it is not accepted by immigration. This is a common question as well, or a myth. Many people contact us asking that if you are in the nationalities of a country that's eligible for Friendly Nations Visa, but your spouse is not. For example, you're Canadian and your wife is Colombian, or you are British and your husband is Nigerian. Okay, many people say that, or believe that because of having that status of the spouse not holding a passport eligible for the Friendly Nations visa, then the application cannot go through, and that's wrong because that requirement, that nationality requirement for the Friendly Nations visa program is actually mandatory for the main applicant. Okay, so if you are Peruvian, okay, which is a Friendly Nations country added in July last year, and your wife is, I don't know, Ecuadorian, for example, who is not a Friendly Nations visa country, then you can apply together. Okay, is it legal to create a company to hire myself? That it's a good question, and my answer to that is that yes, it is legal. There is no, it can be bogus, definitely, but it's not something illegal. For example, you could buy shares of a Panamanian company, the national brewery company, or beverage company, and at the same time be hired by that company. We're talking about big companies here. Or if you bought shares of Microsoft and you are hired by Microsoft in Panama, that's legal. Well, it works the same if it was a small company, which any lawyer in Panama would set up for you. So that could be done, but it has to be properly done. And most importantly, that doesn't mean that the old residency program is back. Okay, it's an option, in fact, that has existed since August 7th, when the new program took effect. And many attorneys in Panama have been processing residency packages in that manner since last year. Is a $2,000 additional investment per dependent needed? So, for example, right now the residency option under the Friendly Nations visa will demand you to invest at least $200,000 in the country, or to have a job. Many people believe that the $2,000 additional per dependent would be needed. For example, if you are 6 applicants, the main one, and 4 dependents. I'm sorry, 6, the main one and 5 dependents. Many people say that, well, you would need a $200,000 plus $10,000 investment. That's actually not correct for this visa option. The visa option is very clear that you would need $200,000 investment or the job option. And why this topic is important? Because in Panama, we have other residency programs that do require a $2,000 additional investment per dependent, but it's not the case for the Friendly Nations visa program. Another myth, is the Friendly Nations visa permanency status secure within 6 months? Well, not anymore. Under the old program, you would obtain permanent residency within 6 months. Under the new Friendly Nations visa program, again, which is in effect since August 7th, 2021, the permanent residency status is only secured after 3 years. Okay, I'm going to cover that time frame on the next during this conversation, but this presentation. But that's a big difference between the old program. Also, it's a $5,000 personal bank account in Panama needed. Not anymore. Again, under the new Friendly Nations visa program, that requirement was eliminated. All right. So all of those little points right here are myths, and at the end of the day, it's also misinformation that people find online. It's our job as licensed attorneys in the country to to instruct our clients and any foreigners who communicate with us or with our team. Now, what is true? What is an actual fact? Some of the things I just said a few minutes ago are factual things. Okay, so let's understand what are the paperwork documentation required for the program. We have existing clients joining us today. We have new clients and folks who are already in the process. And sometimes they like to understand from us directly what are the requirements. So you'll need 5 photos, just standard photos, small size, ID size photos, 5 photos per person, per applicant. An original passport. The passport must be in good condition. If the passport has a tiered page, is all wet and is not in good condition, immigration will not accept it. And the passport cannot be older than, cannot have an expiration date within 6 months from the application. So if your passport is about to expire, you need to get a new passport. That's very important. Also, the federal report is necessary, and about 99% of our clients, they will bring a federal police report. Some reason, some people sometimes they don't pay attention, and they will get a local police report. For example, a clerk's, a county's police report, it's not accepted. It must be a nationwide level police report. For the USA, it would be an FBI. For Canada, it would be a RCMP police report, and so on. Any adult applicant will require this, and childs underage, they would not require the police report, okay? So, if you're applying with your dependents, who can be your spouse, your fathers, your parents, the main applicant's parents, and the children, again, regardless of their nationality, as long as the main applicant is a qualified Friendly Nations Visa citizen, okay? So they'll need, for the spouse, one of the documents that you'll need aside from the police report is a recently issued marriage certificate, okay? By recently issued, we mean that if you were married 20 years ago, immigration don't want a notarized copy of that. They don't know, their criteria is that they don't know if you're divorced now. So you need to visit the civil registry's office, the clerk's office, and ask them to either print a new copy, okay, stating that you were married long ago, but a new copy with a recent date, or if they don't do that, then to make a copy made and have them putting a true stamp on the document. But that true stamp cannot be from a notary. It has to be from the registrar's office. For the child, the children will not require a police report, but they need a birth certificate, also recently issued, because that's the criteria from immigration. If the children is from 18 years old and 25, they must be full-time students, okay? And they must be single. So up to 25 years old, your children could apply with you on the main file, the main application, and would obtain permanent residency with the main file, with the main applicant. Sorry. For parents, the main applicant will need his own police birth certificate to prove the relationship with the parents. Okay, that's in the case if you are applying with your parents as well, and the parents should be the parents of the main applicant. Sometimes we have spouses bringing the main applicant's the husband, and they want to bring the wife's parents. In that case, we usually recommend the wife to become the main applicant, if eligible, of course. So, about the authentication of the documents. A document issued by any third country, any other country, is not automatically accepted in Panama. For it to be accepted, it has to be legally notarized. It's basically a notarization for international use, okay? And the only way to do that is by having the documents certified by the Consulate of Panama, or by having the documents apostille, all right? Apostille comes from a French word from the Hague Convention, where some countries are signatories of it. So for example, Canada is not a signatory of the apostille, the Hague Convention. So for Canadians, the only option they have is the Consulate of Panama in Toronto, Vancouver, and Montreal. And for the United States, for example, you have the options of any of the Panamanian consulates or doing apostille. The same for South Korea, for Australia, for South Africa, for Brazil, and so on. How do they look at it? Like, many people are not familiar with it. You can see on the screen a sample we like to use to present. The white page is just an FBI report from the United States, while the yellow page is how an apostille certificate looks like from the USA, okay? All the apostilles documents will have the same format. They might have different colors, different letter types, different fonts, but it's the same format, okay? The same here for the RCMP police report from Canada, the one you see right here on the screen, while the document on the right, it's on the verse of the main document, it's the Panamanian Consulate Authentication, okay? The Panamanian Consulate Authentication, regardless of the country where it was issued, it's gonna look like this on your documents. So the document must be recently issued by the main document, in this case, the RCMP police report. The 6 months date that immigration takes is not the date of the authentication or the apostille. It's the date of the document issued. And remember that this kind of legalization will be required for birth certificate for children, police report for adults, and the marriage certificate for the couple. Right here, the clearance certificate, it's the nationwide police report issued in South Africa with an apostille from South Africa. So you can see that the apostille might change from country to country on the format and the colors, but they all keep the same content structure as per the Hague Convention. Now, the most important part of the Friendly Nations Visa Program, as it is since August 7th, 2021, it's the requirements. What are the eligibility requirements for this residency program? So as of now, there are only 3 options. And those 3 options are either having a job in Panama, which is an employment, or owning property with a minimum value of $200,000, which can be with bank financing, not owner's financing, okay? Or have a fixed term deposit in a Panamanian bank with a minimum amount of $200,000, okay? And those investments must be kept for a minimum of 3 years, if chosen to. But one of the options is the work contract. So let's cover each of the options one by one. The work contract option. If you are an individual who are offered a job in Panama, as long as the job is with a minimum wage of $1,000 per month. Now, important, those little details are not in the law, okay? Immigration issues the law, and then they regulate internally. So many of our clients ask us to share the law. They want to read it themselves. You really have to walk into immigration and ask the officers there what the rule is, okay? So their current rule on employment is $1,000 minimum wage for the main applicant, all right? They are even requiring a $250 additional wage per dependent. Again, this is something that we know by practice from immigration, as we've done this before. And this is the option. So if you have a job, they're gonna need documentation from the company who is hiring you, a certificate from the company who's hiring you, and some documents, a business license, and so forth and so on. Immigration is going to demand from you as well to present a work permit application, but the work office will not allow us to proceed with the work permit without the residency being filed. So what they do is that we have to prepare the work permit application, and then we just share with immigration a copy of the work permit, okay? Now, through the approval of the residency process, we have to secure the work permit approval as well. They kind of like go linked together for this option. The company must be active, must be in good standing, must be an operational company, a business company with a business license, filing income tax every year. And the tricky part here is that to file for this residency under the work contract, you need to prove all of those documentation, but immigration will approve you for the first stage of the process. I'm going to cover the timelines on the stages, but the first stage of this process is 2 years. After 2 years, we have to do a second filing. And on that second filing, immigration will demand us to provide paperwork that the company is operational, it's active. And the 2 years has still not been passed by, but it's very likely, and many of the licensed attorneys in Panama practicing on immigration agree that immigration will most likely demand for the final approval for us to file 9 months of consecutive Social Security payment slips to the government based on the $1,000 minimum salary. If that happens, there's an additional cost to the process, which will cost an extra Social Security between employers and employee. It's about 22-23%. So you can do the math. It's about $200 and so per month by 9 months, plus the accounting fees. This could lead to an additional $3,000 cost on the final of the stage later on. I'm going to be covering the timelines. So the tricky part with this option is that if you have a real job with a real company, then it's fine. But nothing prohibits you to purchase a company who is operational and have that company hiring you. But all of those legal costs, additional costs, have to be covered, have to be included. Otherwise, the applicant might have the risk of having a permanent residency denied after 2 years. Okay, so it's a little tricky. Yeah, it's legal and it's doable. Okay, and many attorneys are doing it that way, and some choose not to do it that way. Of course, because it can be a little bogus. It's not something that is promoted as openly. But immigration is aware of this, and it's not something that wouldn't be accepted as long as properly done. The second option is just simple and basic, spending $200,000 or more in real estate transaction in Panama. Immigration will demand you to invest the money and will demand you to prove that the property has that value. So we've had clients asking, what if they buy something from $100,000 and do improvements for $100,000? Well, that's doable, but the whole transaction has to be ready with the public registry and updated with the tax office in order for immigration to even consider that. Okay. Bank mortgages are allowed as per the law disposition, and this is one of the basic properties required. In fact, in the past, under the old program, you could acquire property, but immigration wouldn't require a minimum value. And I recall recommending clients to have at least a minimum value of $10,000 back then. And then we raised it to $20,000, $30,000, $50,000, but immigration never had a specific value. And why the values could be that low? No property here would cost you $10,000, but there might be properties that cost you $100,000 and it's got a register value for tax purpose of $1,000. Many years ago, we did one filing with a property with $1,000 value, and immigration came up saying that was too low of a value. We increased it to $10,000, and immigration accepted. And from then, we started recommending on $10,000. But well, that's over now, and the minimum amount is $200,000. And the third option is just to have a fixed term deposit in a local bank in Panama for a minimum of 3 years for the amount of $200,000. Important. Remember that Panama has one of the highest APRs in dollar-based accounts in the world. So you can actually get easy 2, 3, 4, and even 5% annual interest rate on bank deposits in Panama, depending on the bank. So the timelines for this residency program. The Friendly Nations Visa under the old program, as I mentioned earlier, for anyone who's late now, would grant you permanent residency with 2 trips to Panama within 6 months total. That's over now. You, under the new Friendly Nations Visa program, will require 4 trips to Panama as a minimum within a time frame of 3 years. Basically, we file the application and you obtain a temporal ID for 6 months. Immigration will review the file and approve your residency within 6 months. That will grant you a provisional residency, which is valid, for 2 years. After those 2 years pass by, at the very last month of the 2 years, we have to prepare a new filing. You need to visit Panama, we'll file it to immigration, and immigration will take your 2 years expired ID and issue you a 6 months temporal ID again while they review the new file. And once that the new file is reviewed, then they will approve your permanent residency. So it's at approximately 6 months. You get a new permanent residency, total time frame, 6 months plus 2 years plus 6 months. it's a 3 years total time frame. Important. Under the second application, immigration, you'll have additional costs. Most attorneys will charge you for 2 different stages, is what we do. So you need to understand what's your cost for the 2 years provisional residency and what's your cost later. But most importantly, later, we have to be able to provide with immigration with any and all requirements they will require. And again, by analogy on another visa called 10% workers visa, immigration demands the worker to provide 9 months of Social Security payment slips from the company. So from any individual, any applicant who is working for a company, for real, no problem. For any applicant who is owning their own company and working for it, they have to cover the cost of Social Security within those 9 months. Now, 2 years from now, immigration might come up and say that that's not going to be required. There is no official statement on that yet. But again, most attorneys practicing immigration agree that that's going to be the case. And any applicant doing it under this scenario of having a job with a company have to consider this. Now, what can go wrong on your application? Different things can go wrong. For instance, we always recommend whoever's your attorney that you hire, first of all, try to work with a licensed attorney in the country, okay? Second, try to share the documentation in advance. Try to make sure to follow all of the steps, all of the instructions of legalization of the documents, or having recently fresh copies of the documents. There are things that can be wrong before the residency application. For example, you come to the country and you forgot a paper. I've seen that happen. The spouse brings a copy and the other left the hard copies, the original copies home. Or things like that, little mistakes. For example, before the application, we contract with translators. The translations services is included within the application, and the translation might make a typo when we visit immigration to file. The immigration realizes that, and then we have to fix that, and that takes us an additional day. Okay, so any such little things might happen, but that's the reason why we ask for a certain period of time for applicants to join and file the application. Once the residency is completed, your attorney has to follow up on the case and be attentive to any instruction that the immigration points out. Okay, anything that happens, we have to be ready to fix it quickly and in coordination and collaboration with the client applicant. So, Cedula, once your residency is approved and you obtain permanent residency, aside from the permanent ID issued by immigration, you're going to be issued another ID called Cedula by the Tribunal Electoral, okay, like the local civil registrar's office. And we recommend clients to obtain this document. This is an additional service. It's very easy to do. We will provide you the paperwork to obtain this document. And you can easily get it after you obtain the permanent residence. All right. It's a document that's required for doing local transactions and even to apply for a tax ID or for nationality later on. Driving in Panama. While you're a tourist, you can drive in Panama up to 90 days. Most nationalities can stay in Panama as a tourist up to 90 days. Americans and Canadians are allowed to stay in the country up to 180 days. But driving, it's only for 90 days. You cannot use your foreign license once you file for a residency application. So once you file for a residency application, you will become eligible to file for a Panamanian driver's license, and that's what you have to do. The requirements are on the screen, and we don't assist with driver's license applications. It's something you can do yourself by visiting the CERTRASEN office, the local DMV office, but we can share the requirements at request. Very important, working in Panama. When you file a residency application, you are allowed to live in the country, but to work, to get a job, you're supposed to obtain a permanent a work permit, which is another permit, which bears other fees, and that can be done joint with your Friendly Nations Visa application. The labor office can take a few months to approve it, and they will grant you a working permit for a validity as per your contract, okay? But it usually matches the period of your residency. Usually the price or our cost, including legal fees and expenses, is $1,000 for it. And the approval is for 3 years once you are a permanent resident. But before you become a permanent resident, the approval for the work permit is for a lower period of time, okay? You can legally work in the country once you have a work permit, but if you work from home, if you work remotely, you are not gonna be mandated to have a work permit, all right? Citizenship, we're just finalizing here before we start the Q&A. The citizenship process can be applied after 5 years of having permanent residency. So for example, all of those clients who apply under the old program, they become permanent residents instantly within 6 months. And after 5 years, they can file for citizenship. Any of the new Friendly Nations Visa applicants will only become permanent residents within 3 years of the application. So they have to wait an additional 5 years to file for citizenship. So their total time frame now is 8 years, okay? And the citizenship application is something that the government approves discretionally, and it can take anywhere from 1 year to 5-6 years to approve it, because there are plenty of applications, and mostly from locals who live, foreigners who live in the country for years, such as folks from China, Colombia, and India, and so on. Well, at our firm, we accept payments in several methods, like PayPal, credit card, cryptocurrencies, and bank deposits. Our firm has been operating since 2008, and we provide all sorts of services, wills and probates, asset succession, tax planning, escrow services, litigation, immigration, real estate transactions, and so on. And Guillermo, help me out here. Yes, because under this visa, immigration will require us to update your ID to file for the new application. They usually ask us to show the ID within the application, and they have that on the system. So we will demand you to you and any applicants with you, okay, to come to Panama to start the process, to visit Panama within 6 months on the approval of the provisional residency, then to visit Panama again within the 2 years of the filing of the new of the permanent residency request, and again within the next 6 months after that.
Thank you, Mark. Our next question is from Adam. He wants to know, if the real estate purchase / investment is held in a corporation, does it qualify to fulfill the requirements? So if they do their investment through a corporation, like buy the property through a corporation, is it still valid?
That is correct. You can do the investment through your personal names or through a corporation. There is no restriction on that. That's a very good question though, because in Panama we have so many different residency types, and one of them allow for companies, others allows for foundations, others restrict them. So it's a good question on that regard. And important, when you file for the residency application, you're showing immigration that you comply by having the 3 years investment, for example, the 3 years bank account or real estate. 2 years later, when you're going to be filing for the permanent residency application, you need to file a new application where you're showing immigration again that you have either of the 3 eligibility requirements. So if it is, for example, a bank account that you had now in 2022 for 3 years until 2025, and 2 years from now, in 2024, you're filing again, you would have a bank account fixed deposit expiring within 1 year. So you would need to renew that for 2 more years. So that the time that you file with immigration 2 years from now in 2024, we are showing immigration that you fulfill the eligibility criteria by having a 3 years valid until 2027 fixed term deposit. The same would be with the property. Of course, you don't need renewal there, but yes, that's a good point.
All right, our next question, also related to the requirement, is from Amy. She wants to know, if applying with the corporation slash contract option, does the corporation need a bank account and hire locals?
That's a great question. Under this visa, you don't. Okay, if it is an operational company that you're really operating, doing business, I mean, it's advisable for you to have a local business bank account. But immigration do not require from you for that company to have locals, okay, hired on the company. They do not require the company to have a business bank account. They require the company to be an existing company, to have a business license. So that means that the company has to file income tax report, even if it is zero, it has to file. And for you, for the applicant to be an employee of the company, which most likely will require, not now, but 2 years from now, for that applicant to prove 9 months Social Security. This is not yet confirmed, but we are about 90% sure of this.
Okay, our next question comes from Robert. He says, if I apply with one option and want to apply with other options down the road for permanent, is it possible?
That's possible, Robert, because you have to fulfill the eligibility criteria of either option on the program. Okay, so if you apply right now with a work contract, 3 years from now, 2 years from now, you're filing to immigration saying that you own a property, that's totally fine. They don't mandate for you to stick with the original eligibility criteria.
Next question is from Verona. This is a good one. He wants to know if he can apply remotely.
That's a very good question. Panama has very, very few options that allow you to apply remotely, and the Friendly Nations Visa is not one of them. In fact, the only one that I can really mention about is the Qualified Investor Visa. By the way, you can check on all of the residency programs and fees on our website. We have much of the information on it. So the Qualified Investor Visa is one that will allow the applicants to file for the residency application remotely. They don't need to visit the country, they apply remotely, and immigration will review and approve your permanent residency within 30 calendar days. And upon approval, you can visit at any time just to have your photo ID of permanent residency taken. So this is very attractive, but it's really a red carpet, a VIP visa, as they require a minimum investment of $300,000 in real estate or $750,000 on bank deposits, fixed deposits.
Thank you, Marcos. Our next question is from John. He asks, if my application is denied, can I reapply? And how many times can I reapply?
That's a good question. You can always reapply. There is no restrictions on that. The only tricky part right there is that on the sworn declaration, which is a form that we provide, which is drafted by immigration, there is a check mark where you put if you've applied for residency before and you've been denied. So you will have to put that you've been denied, so immigration knows that. They could deny your visa if you put that you were not rejected. But no, there is no restrictions on that.
Excellent. Next question is from Dao. He asks, in regards to the fixed deposits, does the applicant need to deposit $200K initially or after the 3 years?
To be eligible for this residency program, you have to present to immigration the existence of one of the eligibility requirements. So if it is by investment, you have to have the investment made and effective to file to immigration at the time that we initiate the application process. This is a good question because we have many clients who say, "Well, Marcos, I wanna invest, but I wanna make sure that they're gonna give me the residency." Well, it doesn't work like that. As long as you fulfill all of the requirements and you have a clean police report, immigration will approve your residency. It's very rare that they don't or that they wouldn't. So yes, you have to have investment first, so then you can file for residency application.
Our next question is from Josh. He wants to know how long he can stay in Panama before applying on his tourist visa.
That's a good question. Okay, Depending on nationalities, again, Americans and Canadians are allowed to stay in the country for up to 180 days as tourists, but all of the other nationalities is either 90 days or even less, such as 30 days. Whoever that overstays their visa, their tourist visa period in Panama, it's not going to be penalized by immigration in the meaning that it doesn't jeopardize the future residency application. What it does do is that it creates a penalty of $50 per month that you have to pay before leaving the country or before filing for the residency application.
Thank you, Marcus. We have a good one now. Richard wants to know, if I lived in two countries, where should my documents be from?
Okay, that's a very, very, very common question. Your documents must be from, well, that depends if you have two passports as well. So basically, you use your main passport, and you can always use a police report from your country of nationality. But if that's difficult for any reason, and you live now in another country, you could use your passport from country A1 and your police report from the country of residency, as long as you have residency documents from that country. So basically, you got to prove to immigration that you've been in that country for more than 2 years legally, and in that event, you can use a police report from that country.
Thank you, Marcus. Our next question is from Charles, and it says, which is better, apostille or authentication at a Panamanian consulate?
That's a good question. We tend to think that apostille is cheaper, but that varies by country. But better, that depends. We prefer apostille documents. Why? Because the apostille documents, we can use it to file to immigration as it is. The documents from the consulate, we need to receive them, and then we have to process an additional stamp at the Foreign Affairs in Panama City. So that changes a little bit the logistics. So we have clients who are coming for, say, a few days, bring the documents. If it is apostille, we are good. But if they bring the document from the consulate, we would request them to courier the documents by DHL to our offices first. Has to be DHL or has to be FedEx or a courier, private courier company, so that we can do that authentication in advance.
Sorry, Marcus, you kicked me out there for a second. Our next question is from Dan. This is a really good one about the work contract option. He wants to know, is a contract for the main applicant sufficient, or does the spouse need an employment contract as well?
That's a good question. Very good question, Dan. Only the main applicant has to fulfill the eligibility requirement for the residency. So if the eligibility requirement is a work contract, basically you got to prove to the government that you have a job, that you are working, okay? That's only for the main applicant. But again, this is not in the law. This is by practice, and it's internal information on immigration for practicing lawyers. The job has to have a minimum wage of $1,000. And if you have a dependent, immigration is recommending, and so are we, that you have a $250 additional wage per dependent. So if it is a couple, the wage on the work contract has to be at least $1,250. If it is a couple with one kid, then $1,500, and so on.
Thank you, Marcus. Our next question is from Nicole. She wants to know, can I get my required documents in Panama?
Maybe, but it can be difficult. The logistics can be done from Panama, but it will be more expensive for you as well. With clients who've done it, we always recommend you to do it in your country and bring from your country. Can it be done from here? Yes, it can, but it can take several weeks or even months, and it will cost you some money on back and forth. With clients, we have clients done it before, and they might have spent anywhere from $500 to $1,000 to obtain in 2 months time frame to obtain the documents from Panama. So we don't really recommend it, but it could be doable depending on your country.
Our next question is from Mark, and it says, which option is most recommended on a cost-benefit overview?
That's a great question, Mark. Which option is more recommended on cost effective? Listen, under the new Friendly Nations Visa program, you will only obtain permanent residency within 3 years. So you gotta consider those 3 years time frame, the travels expenses, and any added on requirements by immigration. If it ever happens, it could be they could add new requirements. We don't know. What we do believe is that if you do a work contract, they will require the 9-month Social Security payments to the government. So all of that add up to the program. Okay, the previous Friendly Nations visa with a budget of less than $10,000, spending half of that because the other half is your money on the bank, you would obtain permanent residency within 6 months. Now you have to have 2 budgets and you have to wait for 2 time frames. Okay, it's a total 3 years period. So it's the 2 budgets would be well over 10 grand by doing this residency program. I mean, now you have to necessarily do a work permit. You necessarily have to file once and file a second time. You can file with different attorneys if you choose to, okay? But you have to pay your attorneys. You have to pay all of the costs associated to it. We would always say that the most cost-effective visa is the retiree visa if you're eligible for it, or that will cost you less, around $2,000 total if you're eligible, and you'll get it within 6 months. Or the Panama-Italy treaty visa, okay, which is similar to the old Friendly Nations visa program, and you get it within 6 months, but only for Italian citizens. Or if you are doing the Friendly Nations visa under the 200,000 property, and you can afford a $300,000 property, we would consider strongly the qualified investor visa, because you are it's the upfront cost is higher, but you are getting the permanent residency within 30 days. So I think it's much more appealing, but of course it's 50% higher investment, so you have to be able to to have that. By the way, Mark, I see a question here from Mark on citizenship. You can find on our website under resources the PDF downloadable questionnaire, official questionnaire from the government, with the information material that you have to study to process the test for citizenship, which is again after 5 years. The eligibility to file for it, it's 5 years after permanent residency.
Excellent, Marcos. Thank you. Next question is from Freire. She wants to know, how long are my documents good for when applying?
6 months by the date of filing it. We've had, for example, if you got the document right now, as of today, the document is valid for the next 6 months. For the next 6 months, calendar months, we can file for a residence application. 6 months and 1 day, it's going to be expired. So even on the very last day of the 6 months, the paperwork will be valid by immigration.
Our next question, Marcos, and this is a good one, is from Tom. He asks, I heard something about a Visto Bueno. What is it? How do I know if I need it?
Okay, the Visto Bueno, it's a very, very important and sensitive matter. Many applicants might have a police record, okay? Many don't even know they have it. It's very common for folks who are under elder applicants to file for their police report and then see some conviction, something or a misdemeanor from 50 years ago. Okay, if you have any misdemeanor, any conviction, anything, any felony on your police report, you cannot file for residency in Panama. Okay. You would first need a pre-approval from immigration that we call Visto Bueno. Immigration right now, it's very tough on that matter, and it's denying most Visto Bueno applications to the point that right now they are not even accepting pre-approval Visto Bueno applications anymore. What they are doing, this is recent, they are demanding us to actually present the application, so that with the application in hands, the head of the department will look at the police report and determine whether or not it's gonna be allowed to be filed. Okay, so it's basically now a verbal visto bueno, which is a problem because that means you would have to go through the whole application process to know if you're gonna be accepted or not. We will start just recommending clients to have us analyze the document and give our opinion if it would pass or not. Again, convictions would not pass, and misdemeanors will pass, but convictions will not. Basically, that's it.
Thank you, Marcos. We have a question about bank accounts. They want to know, do I need to be a permanent resident to open a bank account, or can I do it prior?
That's a good question. You don't really need it. There is not such a requirement in Panama, but the banks, some banks might, it changes by bank to bank. What we do is that if you are a client, we can provide you a reference letter, and usually the banks will accept a reference letter from attorneys. Again, we only do that for our clients, but if you don't have that, you might still be able to, but the chances are about 20-30% that you are able to do it without it. Again, it depends banks to banks, but yes, it's doable.
Our next question, Marcus, is from Rachel. She asks, when applying as a married couple, is there any particular advantage to having one be primary over the other?
That's a very good question. There used to be at the beginning, and then up to that's a good question. Up to 2018 or so, there used to be an advantage on the Friendly Nations visa for the main applicant over the non-main applicant, and the advantage was related to the right to obtain a work permit. From 2018 to 2020 or 21, that advantage was eliminated by immigration. So now the work permit was allowed regardless. And right now, under the new Friendly Nations visa program, it's a good question. I will have to double check on that one. I know the main applicant can obtain the work permit, but we would have to check on the other ones. I think you would have the advantage right now. I'll have to double check, to be honest with you, because it seems to be that under the new program, it's back like the Friendly Nations visa before. We'll have to check because there is an executive decree that says that once you are a permanent resident under the Friendly Nations visa, you can file for a work permit, okay? But under the new Friendly Nations visa program, you're not becoming a permanent resident immediately. It will take 3 years for you to become a permanent resident. So within those first 3 years, my guess would be that the main applicant would be the one with the option of a work permit, not the dependents. Again, I have to double check on that, but that would be my reading on that.
Our next question, Marcos, is from Ray. He wants to know, if I have no earnings, but rather only earning Panamanian bank account interest, do I need to file a return?
Okay, that's a good question. Panama by law, the interest on Panamanian banks are not taxable in Panama. So no, it's not taxable, and therefore the returns are not mandatory, yet they are optional. So yes, you could optionally file for returns, which if it would be the bank interest, it would not be taxable. By the way, common law marriage is not accepted in Panama for residency applications. So if we have common law partners, applicants, or gay couples, for example, it's not accepted. So usually we just recommend them to file separately in 2 applications.
Thank you, Marcos. Our next question is from Gabby. She wants to know, if you apply through FNV with the corporation, do both applicants need to obtain a work permit?
For a couple?
Yes, so for example, you have a couple that's applying under FNV, one main applicant and one dependent. Do both of them need to get the work permit and be employed, or just the main?
No. Only the main applicant. Remember, the eligibility criteria must be fulfilled by the main applicant only, not by the dependents. So the dependents have to fulfill the basic paperwork criteria, such as passport, police report, for adults, and so on.
We have another question related to the corporation. It says, what kind of company is needed to hire yourself? And can the company make money outside of Panama, or does it need to operate in Panama only?
That's a very good question. The company can make business outside of Panama, optionally, but the company must be a Panamanian company, which must be operational in Panama by having a Panamanian business license, okay, which can be included with the company, with the package. So whether you make money in Panama or not, whether you make money abroad or not, it must be a legal operational company. In other words, it has to be a Panamanian company which is ready to make business in Panama, whether you make business in Panama or not.
Thank you, Marcos. Our next question is from Adam. He wants to know, if owning property in a corporation, is it easier or beneficial to restructure it as a purely real estate holding company, or will it not matter?
That's a good question. That's for the work visa?
To apply under FNV with the real estate option through a corporation.
Oh yeah, you can do it for a corporation, and in that case, the corporation would be a corporation which is just a holding company, not a business company. And guys, we gotta distinguish between the two scenarios. You can do a holding company if you are gonna be holding real estate file for residency, or you have to have a business company if you're gonna be using it to obtain under a work contract. Not a problem.
Thank you, Marcos. Our next question is from Ray as well. He wants to know, for the FNV, how long do I have to keep paying the corporation fees?
That's a good question. If you are holding a company under the work contract, it has to be an operational business company. And if you're going to be filing the renewal, that is the the permanent residence application 2 years later under that option, the company has to be existent. So you must have the company and pay for the renewals during that time frame. So the time frame, the minimum time frame, it's at least 3 years.
Shane wants to know, how long do I have to maintain the fixed deposit to apply for the FNV?
To apply, 3 years minimum. To renew it at the second year, it would basically be an expiring, a 1 year to expiration fixed deposit, which means that you would need to renew it for 2 additional years to be 3 years upon the second filing. Okay, so again, for the first filing, 3 years. If the second filing, it's 2 years later, then you will need 2 additional years. That brings a total to 5 years, okay, if you renew it for that purpose.
Thank you, Marcos. We have a good one here. Next question is from Jimmy. He wants to know, can I invest with an LLC from the States?
That's a very good question, and we've had that one before. Listen, in Panama, you are allowed to invest in real estate with foreign companies, okay? So you could use a US LLC, a BVI company, and so on to own real estate in Panama. In fact, we do that for many of our clients holding property in the country. Now, will immigration allow for that or not? I'm of the opinion that yes, they should do it, but I would not recommend an applicant to do it that way, because immigration, they are very, very, very close-minded, and it can be difficult for us to explain to them a foreign structure. Honestly, sometimes they don't even understand the Panamanian structures. So although, yes, it could be legal, I wouldn't recommend to use and I wouldn't advise my clients to do it. And I once had a client insisting on that, and I recall telling him that I'll be happy to do it, but I would only guarantee 50% because it's totally dependable on immigration criteria.
Thank you, Marcos. We have another question about dependents from Daniel. He wants to know, can a couple be defined as dependents even if they're not married officially? So could a couple apply on the same
No.
file even if they're not married?
No. Only marriage couples are allowed, and common law marriages are not allowed by immigration.
Thank you, Marcos. Next question is from Nikita. She wants to know, when you open a business, do you need to hire Panamanians as well?
That's a good question. Depending on the business you're doing, depending on the license and so on, you might need it. But for the purpose of this presentation, for the purpose of the Friendly Nations Visa Residency, immigration to date does not require it. To date, immigration demands the company to prove that you are hired by that company. Okay, you as the main applicant. There are other visa types that requires us to prove to immigration that there are Panamanians, a certain number of Panamanians. 2 Panamanians hired, for example, is for the Marrakech visa. 10 Panamanians hired is for the 10% employees visa, and so on. The Friendly Nations visa doesn't have that requirement currently.
Thank you, Marcos. We have a really good question from Don. He wants to know, once I establish a company, hire myself, and get temporary residence, do I need to start producing invoices?
That's a good question. That depends if the company is operational or not, and if it is operational in Panama or not. For example, if the company is operational in Panama, yes, our tax code requires you to issue invoices. Now, if you have a Panamanian operational company, okay, and just to take on that, I'm gonna take some time to go over this question. To set up a business in Panama, the stages are, you set up a company. Then for that company to be an operational company, you set up a business license. That business license requires you to have a commercial name, like it's a company doing business as, and declare your business address, declare how many employees you'll have, could be 1 or more, the capital, and so on. And then you can start having business. Now, if you have no business for 1 year or 2 years, then you have no invoices. But if you have effective business, 1 business, 1 sale, 2 sales, 3 sales, you are supposed by our commercial code and tax code to issue invoices for your local operations. Now, immigration is not a requirement for immigration. Okay, for immigration, the requirement for us is to prove that 1, you're a worker in the company, 2, the company is active, 3, the company is a business company by having a business license, and 4th, for you having a work permit, which is linked with the labor office for you to work legally, and 5th, on the 2nd year, immigration might, when we file the 2nd requirement, we might have to coordinate to do 9 consecutive monthly filings with the Social Security Agency for the Social Security costs of having you as an employee. If immigration requests that and you don't have it, then your residency could be denied. Again, this is something that there is no way we can know for sure because there hasn't been 2 years. We'll know that in 2023, right? August 2023 is going to start the first applications by the end of 2023 for the 2 years for the permanent residency. And we are of the opinion that that's going to be demanded as it is for other residency types.
Thank you, Marcos. We have a really good question from Mike. He wants to know, is the $200,000 property investment based on the purchase price, or how is it calculated?
Okay, that's a very good question. And guys, we're gonna try to cover all of your questions either by the video here, by me, or by our team members on the chat box. That's a very good question. Immigration is demanding us to provide to them a certificate of the Public Registry of Panama certifying the existence of the company, of the property on your ownership, and a certificate from the ANATI office, which is the Panamanian Property Land Registration Value Bureau or so, where this other office, it's the office which registers the lands values and sent to the tax office. So they will certify that the property has the minimum value of $200,000. As long as we have that, and the property ownership immigration is happy under this residency program, that's the reason why it's not based on the purchase price. It's based on the registered price with the public registry and with the tax office. Okay. If you bought the property for $50,000 and you spend $200,000, $150,000 on improvements, then we are able to have that property with a declared value of 200 grand, which will be accepted by immigration.
Excellent, Marcos. Thank you. We have a question from June. She asks, what options are available to people from non-friendly nations countries?
Great question. For permanent residency, again, I'm going to cover some here, but you can see the list on our website. For non-friendly nations visa applicants, the most popular options are the retiree visa, if you're eligible, the Panama, Italy visa, if you're eligible, if you're Italian. And then by investment would be the forestry visa, which is a residency that requires $100,000 investment in a forestry approved program, okay, which we can recommend you to as well. Or then the qualified investor visa, which right now requires $300,000 on property, but that's going to be raised to $500,000 in October this year. Or the self-solvency visa, which is a long existing residency program that requires from you $300,000 investment on a Panamanian property or fixed term deposit on the bank. Or it could be a mingle of the two. So basically, you could do $150,000 on a fixed term deposit and $150,000 on property, or $50,000 in property and $250,000 in the bank, whatever. But that is required to be for at least 3 years on the bank, if it is money, or property ownership, and it's the total of $300,000. That's the self-solvency visa. We also have the private retiree visa, which requires an approximately of $380,000 on the bank, and gives you a Panamanian traveler passport automatically, but it's not Panamanian citizenship. It's just a traveler passport. So as you see, there are several options for non-friendly nations, but one that starts at the lower threshold, it's by investment, is the forestry visa at $100,000.
Thank you, Marcos. A couple more questions. Our next one is from Alexander. He wants to know, if one sets up his company and is hired by this company, is it necessary to work the whole 3 years? Or is it possible to do part-time work or something of that nature?
That's an interesting question. Let me think here. Immigration is not requiring a copy of the work contract. What they are requiring is a letter from the company certifying that the applicant is an employee of the company with some salary, okay? So whether you're part-time or full-time doesn't really matter. What does matter is that you can prove, the company can prove that you are hired with a minimum salary or wage of $1,000 per month, okay, as a main applicant, plus $250 per month for each dependent.
Thank you, Marcos. Final question before we wrap up. Shane wants to know, are we able to hold investments in cryptocurrency through an IBC and qualify for residency?
Oh, Shane, that's a good question. Cryptocurrencies are not legal tender in Panama. They are in El Salvador for now. The eligibility criteria from immigration is very clear. You either own property for $200,000 minimum value, or you have a job in Panama, or you own a bank fixed term deposit with a minimum amount of $200,000. Okay, so if you hold cryptocurrency, it would not be accepted for the purpose of the Friendly Nations residency.
Thank you, Marcos. I think we're going to wrap up with this one. I would like to thank you for your time and your questions. I think it was a really informative webinar. We would also like to thank all of the members that joined us. We are going to try to get to all of your questions, but if you have any additional questions, you can always contact us at info@permalaw.com, and we'll try to get to your answers as soon as possible.